Hey now, it is Dan Aberhard here, today's host of the Growing the Future podcast. We are back with Season 4, Episode 11. You can sign up for our newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca to get emails about all of our new episodes and find our past episodes there as well. Make sure to give us a follow on all the social media platforms out there and check out our YouTube channel. You can see the video of this conversation and others. You can also find the Aberhard family of companies online, should you wish to do so, starting with aberhardfarms.com to learn more about our farming operation in Saskatchewan, suregrowth.ca to learn more about the precision agronomy consulting services that they offer there, and convergencegrowth.com, where they accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture, and last but not least, aberhardagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. My next guest is a former music teacher that grew up on the farm, and after teaching for a few years, he is now leading the choir, so to speak, on the third, soon-to-be fourth-generation farm that he grew up on in eastern part of Manitoba. He has created a platform on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok known as the Farmerizer, sharing fun and relatable content to the modern-day producer. We had the pleasure of meeting briefly at a conference a couple years ago along with Leslie Kelly. But certainly we'll get to know each other better today. And I've really enjoyed watching him on social media for the lighter side of farming, which is great to see. And I'm excited to talk to a producer today to delve into how he came back to the family farm. Just talk farming. Just talk about what's going on the farm in 2022. It's pretty exciting times in agriculture, I think. And then this whole social media thing, that's how we find lots of the guests on the show. But that's how we get to know each other on the cybersphere, and now we're getting to know each other in another way, a little bit closer yet. So welcome to the show, the one and only Korey Peters, aka the Farmerizer.
Good day. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Korey. The first most pressing, burning question in my mind is, what in the HELL hockey sticks? Oh, I said that wrong. What in the you're the hockey fan. HE double hockey sticks is a Farmerizer. What in the HE double hockey sticks is a Farmerizer? And why is he dancing on the internet?
I do one dancing video and everyone will just not let it go, I guess. So, and I only did a little clip. I had some more dancing in there, and I think I couldn't do it. I just couldn't pull the trigger on it.
Well, I was thinking this guy's a music teacher. He must have taken dancing at school or something.
You do a little bit, kind of. I mean, I like to think I have good rhythm, but dance moves aren't always attributed to just good rhythm. So,
well, the sync was damn good, I must say.
Oh, I tried. Yeah. No, it's the Farmerizer. I don't even remember. I created a Twitter account long before Instagram, and then I created one a while ago, and I don't know why. I somehow came up with the word Farmerizer. I don't even remember exactly how, and then a few years ago, about a year ago, a buddy said, you should try doing a little more Instagram and having some fun with it. It's a different type of platform than Twitter. So I thought, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And I've really enjoyed it, kind of getting into it a little bit, making some funny videos, including the family in them and my farm in them. And it's been a lot of fun.
I was curious, does your music teacher background give you a little bit more courage and latitude to do some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think so. That's one thing, I guess, the fear of being a little bit in public and some of that. I don't have always that fear. Obviously, you get nervous, if you're ever like speaking at a conference or something like that, you're going to have a little bit of nerves. But that's one thing that, doing a lot of music, performing in front of people, sometimes it's smaller crowds, sometimes it's larger crowds. You kind of lose that fear. You get used to it. You learn to accept it and embrace it a little bit. So, yeah, that fear isn't really there.
Well, I'd like to see hear some singing, actual singing, because you mentioned the choir yesterday when we were talking.
Well, the show's just starting, but I mean, if you want,
there's lots of room. There's lots of space for a cappella. Let's be real.
A cappella? Well, I can tell you, one funny story I will say where I had to sing, and I was trying to think of, plan ahead, a few stories in my head of where I would talk about where I used to do a lot of music and singing, and I thought, at the one time when I was teaching, I had two really good teacher friends, and I'm still good buddies with them. They still teach. One's in Winkler and one is in Winnipeg, and we went for a little boys weekend across the border to Grand Forks, like a lot of guys do. Or so we thought, okay, so we get to the border, and the border crosser says, so what do you guys all teach? Because that's what we do. Well, we're all teachers. And one guy's, well, I had geography, phys ed, and I'm like, I teach music. And the border crossing person just looks at me like, music, prove it. And my buddy goes, well, you got to prove it. I'm like, okay. So and we had just done the musical Footloose. So my buddy's like, you got to do it. So I was like, okay. But you got to cut loose, a foot loose, a kick off your Sunday shoe. Ooh-wee, Marie, shake it for me. And the border crossing just goes, okay, you're good. And you're off. And that was it.
What a way to enter America.
Laughing.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Oh, it was funny. Yeah, that one made me laugh. I was like, you sing or you don't cross the border. I was like, okay, I guess I'm singing.
Probably one of the most iconic classic American movies to cross the border with in the history of mankind. So that's a pretty epic story. Well, there's no denying it after that. So I'm wondering, you grew up on the farm, but why did you get into a career as a teacher instead of going gung-ho immediately on the farm?
Well, my mom, growing up, she taught piano a little bit. She plays the organ. She even does like a little handbell group in church. So I kind of grew up with the music side of things, and I learned how to read music, and I learned piano. And my mom put me in, singing, and she always put me in a choir when I was a kid. And I learned to love music. And then from my dad, I learned to work on the farm growing up as a kid. We had a dairy farm until about 2000, and we sold the dairy side and added a hog operation at that time. So growing up, I always, get up in the morning, milk cows at 4 a.m. before I go to school. But I also had, choir in the evening. So I learned to love both. And my sister, who is 8 years older than me, is a music teacher in the local high school here, and she always was involved with music, and everyone knew that was her jam. And I kind of just followed her. My brother's in between us too, and his jam was farming from the beginning, and I was kind of on the fence of which way to go. And I decided, you know what? The farm was pretty full at the time, and there wasn't really a lot of room for me, and I really loved music, so I said, let's do it. So I went to the U of M. I got a music degree and an education degree, and I went to Winkler, Manitoba, and I taught choir for 5 years, and I loved every minute of it. I really did. It was an amazing experience, and when I was there, we had a great group of young staff, and we had great admin, and it was phenomenal. It was awesome.
Is that something you'd recommend to everybody if there's young people listening, that they get off the farm and try a different career before they come back to the farm, Korey?
I think it does teach you a few things. We've been talking about that actually on our farm right now, because I'm the third generation and the fourth generation now. My kids are a little younger, but my brother's kid, they're almost graduated, and my cousin's kid is already on the farm, in his early 20s, and they all have had off-farm jobs, and it teaches you something about, dedication and being there on time. It's one thing if your dad kind of yells at you a little bit for being late to work on the farm, or your mom yells at you for being late to work on the farm. But if it's a separate employer and they go, you're fired, it's a little bit different. It's a little shot of reality. You show up on time or you're fired. Everyone thinks, oh, it's the family farm. I can be a little late today. I'm going to hang out with my friends. I don't really want to work today. And it's a little bit of, there's a schedule. We want to be successful. So you have to follow that on the farm too, and learn those steps to becoming a good employee, and eventually, if it works out, to be a manager, owner, those kinds of things.
Great points. What would a farmer learn if they were put in front of a choir like you taught for 5 years? Pretty quickly, the hard way.
You would learn to deal with a lot of people at once and how to control a crowd. How's that? So, when I was teaching, the classroom environment, the atmosphere is something that sets the tone for your whole class. And you can tell, and teachers can create different atmospheres, and different atmospheres work for different teachers, right? So just like if you're a manager on a farm, there's different types. There's going to be like the high energy, kind of gung-ho maybe type of manager on a farm. There's probably going to be more of a laid back. This is a strategic way. Everything's laid out to the point, but it's not like a high energy excitement, but it's a great farm and probably run really well. And I think in the classroom, it could be the same. For example, my really good buddy that I'm still friends with that teaches at Winkler, he is kind of an old school teacher, but the kids love him. Like he's like kind of, he'll stand behind the desk and preach a little bit, but it works for him, and I don't know, that would never work for me, but for somehow it worked for him. So I think there's definitely some things like that that I could take away from it. But being in front, especially if you're in music, it's high energy to keep, I think the biggest choir I had was about 80 kids. So keeping 80 people attentive, also it was at 8 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday mornings for an hour. So try and wake up 80 grade 11s and 12s at 8 a.m. to get there, and then to keep them attentive and doing what you want them to do to get excited and prepped for a concert or a trip, like we go to a festival away, and trying to get that on 8 a.m. in the morning isn't always easy. So it involved a lot of jumping up and down from me, but it worked.
That's amazing. It's hard to imagine 80 kids that you're arranging to sing. What are some of the highlights working with those kids?
The highlights for me was on my 4th year. So you teach grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. So seeing kids after my 4th year that I had taught from grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, and they graduated, and a few of them I know, I see around every now and then, have gone on to be music teachers themselves, or are involved in music, or just are amazing people contributing to society, and it's great to see that. So when I graduated, I'll say students that I was with for 4 years, that was really cool, and I will not forget that. So
when did you start thinking about coming back to the family farm?
I always farmed. So even in university and while I was teaching, I would always farm in summer, usually for a month or so, kind of right before harvest. Sometimes I would get a little harvest in. It depended what the season was. But then when the farm was transitioning a little bit to my brother and my cousin were taking over, and then it started to, my uncle kind of was like ready to leave. My dad was still he's a few years younger and kind of wanted to stay a little more involved. And also there was room. And with the fact that we had switched to hogs and we had slowly started to expand the grain side a little bit, that gained my interest a little bit more. I wasn't really that in love with hogs. I would work with them. That's the job. I would go and work with them, scale them, help ship hogs, help bring pigs into the barns. We would even, I would also have to wash the barn, everybody's favorite job, but you got to do it. So when there was a transition and there was a little bit of more room on the farm, after near the end of my 5th year of teaching, I approached my brother and my cousin, who had kind of taken over the farm, and just said, hey, would there be room if I were to ask for a leave and I could come, farm for a full year, full farming, nothing else. And so my admin were super nice, and they actually gave me a leave for a year. So I went and I farmed full time for a year, and I had the option to go back and teach. And after, a lot of thinking about it and talking to my brother and my cousin about what it would look like if I stayed and what the farm's kind of goals were and where we were heading, I decided, I think I'm going to try farming full time. And so I made the switch.
Which is a bigger challenge? Managing 80 kids in a choir or dealing with your family on the farm? Let's be real. They're not going to hear this, so carte blanche. Carte blanche.
I would say they each have their own challenges. Farming with family is something that I love, but it also has its challenges for sure. There's going to be times where maybe you lose your cool a little bit. And I think that's just farming in general. Now you add the family dynamic, and knowing that I have to see my brother at, his kid's birthday party in the evening later on after we just had a screaming match or weren't very happy with each other about something that happened. That's life, right? That's farming with your family and working together in a business. But it's also learning to figure out that dynamic of professionalism and, kind of assigning some roles. Ours aren't really written down in paper, but, we all kind of know our role on the farm. And as the next generation comes in, that's something we're going to work at, obviously, is trying to define those roles a little bit. But yeah, and, I'll never forget, we're like trying to control 80 kids at 8 a.m. in the morning. That's a whole ball game on its own. That's a whole season, not just one game. That's a season enveloped into 1 hour. But man, it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
How does it work with the roles and responsibilities with the family and the family farm?
Well, our farm is set up. My cousin, his name is Scott, so he does the books for us, and he would kind of, I guess, be the title of manager. So he does the books, and he also helps. We talk about everything together. So me, my brother, my cousin, choosing which seed varieties, which which rotations we want. And for us, that also involves manure applications because we have hogs, and we also have manure on other fields that are close to other hog barns as well. So that obviously affects our rotation of our crops quite a bit. So he would be kind of the managerial. He deals with our hog operation, and I would be kind of, the title like yard manager. So I do most of the trucking, and I also, take care of the bins. I take care of the yard, organizing all that side of things. My brother, who is very mechanically inclined, he would be the shop manager. He does those things. So for the most part, though, I always use the Low German word. My parents speak Low German, is the Scheckbangel. I can do anything and everything if I need. So, whatever needs to be done, I'll run from place to place. But for the most part, I'm in the shop helping my brother out. And then if need be, when it's time, then I'm obviously around the yard a lot more.
Can I ask you something personal?
Yeah, of course.
I'm always curious. I was in the Mennonite Academy for a brief period of time. That I worked with folks at good folks at PLS. We always used to joke, right? Yeah. I never fully graduated, but I'm thinking about, you've got the fabric of culture, not only for agriculture, but what does it mean for you and your family in farming to be part of the Mennonite culture?
That is definitely a culture that is strong in the southeast Manitoba, obviously, and obviously where you used to work too. I mean, it's huge, right? And me, yeah. I mean, like I taught in Winkler. Welcome to, it's like I moved to next door, even though it's an hour and a half away, right? So it's huge, yeah. So obviously I grew up in the Mennonite culture. My parents, we went to a Mennonite church, and there's a lot of amazing things I took from that. And so, yeah, to do that, I mean, some of the things that are talked about in our Mennonite culture all the time are farming, family, and music is a huge part of it, right? I could sing you a lot of the Mennonite hymnal probably for heart, right? I know it just from going to church as a kid all those years and learning all those hymns. And there's something about, that I loved about it, is that when we go to even just a Peters family gathering, we can sing 4-part harmony. And people will sing the soprano, alto, tenor, bass line because they grew up in a Mennonite church and they know how to just sing 4-part harmony. And you go to some other cultures, they have obviously amazing differences, but not a lot can do that. That's a pretty cool thing. When you bust out, the Amazing Grace, or, Praise God for 606 is the one everybody will know if you're in the Mennonite culture. So Praise God from whom all blessings flow. That's, it's like your meal, your little amen before you eat, and that often is nothing but 4-part harmony, and it's something that I'll never forget, and we still do. So I love it. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously that culture, and it's something that I'd say the other side of it that I didn't mention is the culture of giving back in the Mennonite community. I think they are one thing my parents have instilled. Obviously, yes, they, when you're in the Mennonite culture, you tithe your 10%, whatever that is, in your church if you attend. But there's also just about being integrated in your community and being involved, and that's something our farm always does. And it's not about having your name out there, it's just about being involved. So whether that's being on local committees, boards, we're always involved with the local minor hockey, as we all went through it. Whichever school we all attended, our farm always makes sure that we try to give financially to that school. We try to give a little bit financially to the hockey or the local community. They're building a skate park now. So yeah, those are things that are important. And the local community also knows that a lot of the local farms want to be integrated and want to be a contributing member to the local community and help it thrive. So they often, they come tap your shoulder. Would you be willing to help this out? And sometimes it's asking for money, and sometimes it's just asking for volunteers, right? But it's something that I think a lot of Mennonite farmers in the area are so proud and love to be a part of the community.
I thought you were going to give me a really great description of schmont fat. Did I say that right? Schmont fat?
Oh, schmonfa, yeah, that's great. I love it. I do. I mean, nothing but white sauce on noodles. That's a go-to for sure. I mean, we got the Mennonite Heritage Village about 10 minutes away. I actually worked there for a summer, just so you know. And I ate that like every day at lunch, and I think I packed on the dad bod before I was a dad at that point. So, speaking of working off the farm, there you go. Spent the summer working at the Mennonite Heritage Village.
Good to fatten you up before any winter for sure. Back to farming. What is most on your mind? What year are you in farming, and what is most on your mind going into 2022?
This is my 12th summer full time. So going into this year, most on my mind right now is the weather. Obviously, I've been very lucky. Like, you know, I've had 12 amazing springs for planting in a row. Like, we have finished, I believe, the 4th week of June at the latest for 12 years in a row. And we haven't even, you know, we've had one or two where we've had to push a little bit, but for the most part, it's been pretty easy. And I guess I've been spoiled. You know, my brother and cousin, they talk about 09 and 06. And my dad always talks about, I believe it's 79, where they got snow like this week or something. You know, they like a typical farmer, they never forget those dates. And I won't forget this spring, I'll tell you that. So far, we have, you know, about 200 acres in the ground. Last year, we finished yesterday. So we got a little ways to go. So that's what's on my mind right now is trying to get a crop in and trying to figure out the best way to do it and trying to make sure we plan ahead for all the cases, like the scenarios. And we've done that already. So yesterday, you know, we had a little meeting. We already decided we're cutting back on some corn acres. We've managed to find some sunflower seed. So we're going to swap some of those acres out, because for us, it has to do a little bit with manure. And if we can say, you know what, we're not going to take manure on this field because that will speed up our process of planting. I don't have to get that manure applied and then work it in and then go seed. I don't have to wait those extra 3-4 days. So we made that decision already and have already cut back about 350 acres of corn. And that's just something that's part of it. Yeah.
And last year you came out of a drought. You guys were really dry over there, right?
Yeah.
We probably had more moisture this year already. Eh?
Yeah, I think so. We had a great spring, a great start, and our early season crops did great. Like wheat did really good last year. We had just enough rain, I guess, throughout the summer to cover that, and then the later stuff just dried up. Yeah, so our corn, you know, it just didn't quite finish like we wanted, and you're gonna have that. But it went into fall really dry. We did get a little bit of rain late in fall, which was nice, and then we got quite a bit of snow. And, you know, however much of that actually soaks into the ground is always up for debate, I'll say. But I was really happy that we had some moisture over the winter, and I was hoping that a lot of it would go in. And now apparently we have too much. So welcome to farming in the prairies.
Yeah, exactly. It's always too much or too little of something, but never quite perfect, unfortunately. But those are the things we can't control. Yeah. How much is inflation, the cost of fuel, fertilizer, manpower, high commodity prices, like how much is that on your radar?
It is right now, yeah. For us, on our radar right now is we have hog barns that we manage and take care of. We have a manager and 2 workers usually that kind of take care of them. And right now we have been short one swine technician, 1 employee for a month or so now, and we're struggling a little bit to find someone. So, and a lot of people are demanding. You know, they want a little bit more money, they want a little more benefits, because everything's got a price for them too, right? When they go to the grocery store to feed their family, it's the same. It's up 7% or throw a number. It just keeps going up. So they want a little bit more money. So we've had to try and find ways to pay a little bit more, to try and add a little more benefits to entice employees to come. And I think that's definitely going to be a topic for ag in the future, is how to keep employees, for some year round and for some, you know, as more seasonal. But that's going to be something, yeah, for sure. Like how to keep employees. And we're a little bit more, I will say, lucky just geographically. We're located only 30 minutes from Winnipeg. Now imagine if your farm is, you know, 2.5 hours from the nearest city. That changes a little bit your availability of employees that are within the area.
How does having the hog farm in the mix impact? You talked about it a little bit, but it's a big difference to have that extra component. How does that affect what you guys do on the grain farm side?
It is really nice to have a little bit of security. If you have a off year in grain, you have a little backup for having double dipping in two different kind of categories. And in the southeast Manitoba, where we are located around Steinbach, that's very common, right? There are a lot of hog operations, chicken operations. There's even a few turkeys around, so there's lots of that. And obviously there's lots of dairy farms around too. So having grain and animals has provided us a little bit of security. It's also provided us the opportunity to grow. So for us, when we switched from dairy to hog, it freed up a little bit more time. And we did. At first, we always used to work in the hog barns kind of in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we would head to the grain farm. And as we decided we wanted to grow the grain operation, as more families came in, we started to grow the grain side, and we realized that, it was time to find somebody to manage the hog barns and kind of take that off our plate and focus on what we really wanted.
How does it affect your fertility? Is that a really big boon to have manure on the ranch?
It is, yeah. It's a really big boom. For us, it was the main reason we started growing corn. In 2014, I believe we started growing corn when we realized, we have so much excess manure, and with a high concentration of phos, we realized, this is, and more hog farmers in the area that also grain farm were starting to plant corn. And we said, okay, so it's time. That's a big investment, having a corn dryer, and you need some larger bins for bin space, and we needed a planter. So for us, it meant we kind of did it slowly over a couple years, but it allowed us to also grow our operation, but it meant more equipment, and a little bit more employment that way too. Now we're running two machines for springtime, not just one seeder. Now we're running a planter and a seeder at the same time. So it definitely threw a little wrench into it, but it was a learning curve that we were looking forward to working on.
How many hogs? How long are they there? Where do they go? How healthy is the hog industry right now, Korey?
I think the hog industry in Canada is pretty healthy right now, especially in Manitoba. There's large hog operations around, and they're all run by amazing families. So for us, we have 6 finishing barns that are right close to our farm, 2 miles away. So they're just around 2,000 pigs in each barn. So those little guys, they are there for not too many weeks. We have a great manager. They take care of them. And our pigs end up, those ones, they go to High Life, to the High Life plant in Neepawa. And that's what our barns that we kind of take care of are close to us. But we also work with a great organization called the Progressive Group out of Niverville. Just phenomenal gentlemen that run that organization. And what we've done is they kind of have like a farmer co-op, we'll call it. So we work with a few other farmers, and with that we own a few sow barns. We own, percentages. So, one we could own 50%, one we could own 40% of. And so with those few sow barns that we have shares in, one of those barns can help fill our farmer co-op, and it fills all of our finishing barns with the piglets that we need. And then the other piglets all go across the border. So you're heading down into, South Dakota, Minnesota kind of thing.
Has there been a big impact from what's happened in China with the swine flu?
Yeah, there has. The Canadian Border Agency protects with African swine flu. Like they really do an amazing job of getting the word out there and trying to keep it out of Canada and obviously out of North America. It's a huge topic. My cousin Scott is on Manitoba Pork Council and Canadian Pork Council, so he's our connection to that and always brings back the info talking about, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going. But biosecurity in the hog industry is huge, right? So it's something that's talked about at every meeting. And if ASF ever reaches North America, that will drastically adjust the hogs and the hog industry in North America. And how it will affect it is obviously we can try and predetermine that, and I think everyone is doing everything they can to plan for it. But if that ever happens, it will be a drastic change in the industry. Yeah.
Interesting. On the grain side, what are you most excited about? What is the biggest innovation that your guys are working with? What's got you pumped up about 22?
Oh, you know what? I would say we are growing. So I'm trying to convince the guys to maybe consider malt barley. So we haven't grown barley on our farm. I've never grown it. We still had a little left over in the bin when I started 12 years ago. I think it was actually from like about 14, 15 years ago. It was just left in the bin. But we did, we decided, we picked up a few rental acres coming up this year. And so we decided to put some barley in. We're not growing malt barley this year, but what got me a little excited, I had the opportunity in winter to go to the Malt Barley Academy in Winnipeg. And I kind of took like a 2-day crash course on malt barley, and you get to taste test a little beer, which I always love. There's so many great breweries in Winnipeg, and I was like, let's do this. Let's grow malt barley. I was so excited. Let's go. And then you start getting into the reality of, oh yeah, your area doesn't grow really great quality malt barley. I'm like, well, we can change that. How do we change that?
Yeah.
So, we'll get there. So for this year, we are just, we're not growing malt barley, but it's a start. I have
didn't win that battle
left to do apparently.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about it. So, I would love to grow some malt barley in the next couple of years. At least try it. I'm sure this year we're not doing a malt variety. We talked about, some different varieties already for next year for 2023. I think we'll probably end up doing a malt variety next year. And then, if we think it's going to meet malt quality, well, then we'll probably do that. But we'll leave that for this year. Yeah. That's something I'm really looking forward to. Just a little more, find a little more direct to consumer kind of idea. A little, you get a little bump increase in pay if you can meet that quality standard. So those are all things that I think farmers are thinking about, is how to added value onto whatever it is you do on the farm. Add a value. So if we can add a value by getting malt quality, we want to add it.
Love it. How do you innovate with such a democracy? I mean, new products, new practices, new equipment. It's probably a process.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think, our farm, we try to talk about things openly and honestly and what we all want. So, we kind of have three third generation owners, and my dad and my uncle are still around. They would be the second. And, they're still involved in the meetings, just, pretty much to make sure we don't sell the farm on them, I think. I don't know. But we're working on it. We're trying to figure out, what's the next thing? What are we always looking for? And it can be anything, like we do live in a very fast growing area with like communities. So little towns are growing. So Mitchell is a little town by us that's booming, so I know a neighbor that, one thing they managed to do is they had a lot of land surrounding it. So they've slowly done some developments and some of those things, which are great. It's another source of income, but you also lose that land. So you have to take that into consideration of how that works over time. But yeah, it's something that we talk about all the time, is how do we decide what we want to do? Where do we want to go with the farm? And it's something that we've talked about, even bringing in a professional. We haven't done that, but we've talked about bringing in someone just to say, let's set some goals. This is what we want to do in 5 years. This is what we want to do in 10 years. And we've done that. We just haven't brought a professional in to do it, but we're always talking about it. And we're always thinking, like trying to think a little bit ahead, plan ahead. And I think it's something we've really learned from missed opportunities. So a few years ago, there was a decent chunk of land that came up, and it was around, I'm going to say 800 acres, which would have been a significant change for us at the time. Like it would have probably meant, well, at that point, before the fourth generation was here, we would have needed an employee and all this, and we hummed and hawed, and we weren't ready for it. And, we finally said, okay, we want to. And then we tried to, we came up with an offer. And by the time we got the offer in, it had sold the night before for cash value, whatever it was, asking price. And we said, you know what, that made us mad a little bit. We're like, we weren't ready. And I think that made us think a little bit that we would like to prepare for some of those things. And you can't be prepared for every situation, obviously. But if you have a goal set, it's when that opportunity comes up, it's like, yeah, that was in my goal. I prepared for it. The bank knows about it. All our owners know about it. We're ready for it. This is it. Let's go. But obviously every situation is different. It might not work out, but if you're not prepared for it and you haven't said, this is what I want, then sometimes it's hard to ever meet that goal if you don't have it in place.
You said the second generation was concerned that you might sell the farm. Is it hard not to sell at $7,000 an acre?
I'm totally joking. Oh, No. There's no selling. We all love what we do. We joke about that sometimes because they, as our farm has been taken over by the third generation, and then we always joke that the old guys kept 51% voting rights just so we wouldn't sell it on them. That's what we always joke about.
Well, where do you see the farm in 3 years and 10 years and 20 years with another generation coming up?
You know what? Yeah, we've talked about that. Recently as this winter, talking about that as the fourth generation is kind of just here now. My cousin's kid, his name's Chase, in his early 20s, is farming full time. He's kind of, doing the egg dip kind of thing at the U of M and working his way through that. And he has a young family. So, he's got a lot of things on his plate too. And my brother's, his oldest boy is just about done grade 11, and he really, seems very into farming. It's all he talks about, all he wants to do. So, again, he's working off farm right now, which we've talked about is really good for him, I think. And we'll see what happens in a couple of years. But for us, it's where do we want to be in 5 years? So when I kind of entered the farm, it was the discussion of, okay, we have this much land right now, and we can kind of, crunch the numbers. We are making about this much off of it to support, at the time it was 4 families. Now I came in, I met my wife very, very shortly after that, got married, had kids. So now it's like supporting a whole nother family. Well, how do we do that? So for us, that meant we had decided we needed to expand a little bit and add some more grain acres to be able to support my family coming in, and also knowing that the fourth generation was coming pretty soon. So for us, that meant finding some acres, and for us, that was challenging, because in our area where you have dairy operations, chicken operations, and pork operations, land prices have gone up a lot, and that's anywhere, I would assume, in Canada too. But for us, they've gone up a lot in our area because the value of manure is starting to be realized, as the benefit that gives to your crops and the soil, but also the money it can save you from fertilizer costs. It can also help save some of that. So people are taking that into consideration, saying, you know what, I'll pay a little bit more for the land, knowing that I will save in the long run because my fertilizer price isn't through the roof. So, they start taking that into consideration. So we're like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this work? So we ended up buying land that is a little farther away. So it's about 20 miles away, hour and a half with a tractor. And for us, that was an opportunity that we saw that would work for us. So it was a huge transition. And the first time I took a tractor out there, I was like, holy crap, this is a long drive. But you get used to it, you plan for it, you work with it, and it's also allowed us to expand a little bit. So, at first we only started out with about 500 acres out there, and it's in an area, it's called Zoda, so 20 miles away. And we started to figure out how to work. It's different types of soil. It's very sandy out there versus our heavy clay at home. So it was like a transition. The first time, I'll never forget, my uncle came with me in the sprayer, and there's a puddle out there. And at home, I don't drive through puddles. I drive around them. If I drive through a puddle with a sprayer, I'm done. And I'm talking with the little skinny pizza cutter tires on, right? Like you're toasted. If you're driving through Randolph, you're done. You drive around it, or my uncle would kill me because he'd be so mad because I'd waste an hour getting stuck. And I was heading straight for a puddle, and he yelled at me. And I'm like, relax, it's sand. We're going right through it. And we just go through it like nothing. And nothing sticks because it's sand. You don't have mud flying everywhere. And it was really interesting just learn about the soil there and figure out what works there, what crops grow well there, what doesn't grow well there, what we can do there. It can rain and we can be seeding the next day there. That ain't happening at home, So right. That's all these transitions and learning what works. And it's only, 20 miles away, but it's like a whole different world.
Isn't that something, how it's so different?
Yeah.
Is the future for the farm more diversified then, or is it more specialized, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say it's probably keeping the diversification we have right now, but like figuring out a little bit more specialized, like adding that malt barley, let's get into that, right? Or trying to figure out how we can add value to what we have. And I think that's another huge topic in ag right now, and especially in Western Canada, is you see lots of farmers adding, you know, whether it's their own little cleaning plant or some way. Like, I mean, I know a few farmers here in Manitoba that they sell their sunflower seed. They bag it and sell it for bird seed. I mean, that's a huge industry. And we talked about that on our farm. I forget what the number is. I was at a conference a couple years ago, and I think it's like a $50 million industry in North America. It's got to be more than that. It was way bigger. 500 million. It's huge. It's like the second most popular thing besides gardening is feeding birds in North America. And you're like, why are we not tapping into that? It's another industry, right? Obviously, it's a little hard to just, well, I'll just set up a plant and do it. But there are people that are doing those kinds of things, right? They're finding a way to add value to what they're growing, figuring it out. And so that's something we're always talking about. So,
Interesting. Now, when it comes to social media, when did you first realize that Twitter, for example, could be a tool more than just entertainment and, Twitter fights?
There's stay away from the hashtag egg Twitter, because it's just like a lot of farmers yelling at each other sometimes, but provoking each other, I should say.
Exactly.
No, you know what? I created a Twitter account while I was teaching. Actually, I remember it. It was at a professional development day, and they brought somebody in to talk about social media a little bit and how teachers were starting to use it to connect with students at home and stuff, I think was the topic. And they introduced me to Twitter. I think it was in 2009, I'm going to say, something like that. And I was like, okay, so I created a Twitter account. I just used my name, whatever. Didn't use it, never touched it for a few years. And then somehow when I came back to farming, I don't know who it was. A friend said, hey, do you have Twitter? Like, check it out. You should check out Egg Twitter. And I'm like, okay. So, start doing it, and you start playing around. I'm like, oh my goodness, there are cool stuff here. Look at all these fancy tractors and all these farmers that are doing amazing stuff. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then before long, I realized, like, this is awesome. I've sold equipment on Twitter. I've bought equipment on Twitter. I've fixed equipment on Twitter, like, a million times. Like, I'm stuck in the field and my brother's busy on the planter and my cousin is getting seed and I can't get a hold of them. I just take a picture of it. And if I know someone has that piece of equipment, I will send it directly to them, or I'll just put it out there on, West Canadian Egg hashtag or Egg Twitter or whatever. And usually somebody will have that same planter, has that, whatever, that weird piece of equipment. You're like, I have this broken piece, and they're like, oh yeah, do this. Right. And it's spread more now to even dealers doing it, right? Like, I saw a guy the other day. He has a Pro 700 monitor, and it's this problem that everybody has in their Case tractors, or it'd be New Holland tractors too, I guess. And he just put it out there. He's like, everyone keeps asking me how to do this. Here it is. And he went through the monitor. It was like a 40-second clip, and it had 500 comments because everyone's like, thank you. Like, this is the best thing ever, right? Fixed. Problem solved. That guy just gained himself so much extra attention that his dealership will now probably benefit from it. And he took him, a minute to make a video and explain the growing problem that everybody has with the same monitor, with the same problem. Done. Fixed. Problem solved. Thank you, Twitter.
Unbelievable, eh? I always thought it was such a great tool for business, and it's great to see people realizing that. I think a lot of people are afraid to use it, but it's a great way to talk to customers, and no animals were harmed in the making of this made-for-TV movie, right? I mean, it's dangerous for businesses in some respects. I don't know, maybe it can be fatal for some businesses, but really it can be a good tool. Now, you were doing the Twitter, you got some 5,000 followers on there, but relatively recently you've developed this persona, and I kind of see it growing. I mean, you start practicing it, you start doing it, you get better at it, you're having fun doing it. Like Farmerizer, this is the thing. Yeah, where's the T-shirt, man?
Yeah. You laugh. Somebody asked me out there, like, you should make a T-shirt. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I asked my wife, I'm like, should I make a T-shirt, like something funny, like Farmerizer, and just give it to charity or something? And she's like, well, that's a good idea. But she's like, what happens if, nobody buys it and then you owe lots of money? She's like, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. I'm like, okay, fair enough. We'll wait. Yeah, she's like, wait till you get to 5,000 followers. Then we'll talk, Otherwise, it's going to be just your mom buying them all. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
For you.
So, no, yeah, exactly. Yeah, my mom, I don't want you to lose money. Here's 500 t-shirts. Okay, great.
Right. The warehouse is full.
No, you know what? It's, I went to, I think it was a Blue Bomber game last summer with a buddy that's on Instagram quite a bit, and he's got his hands in everything. You know, he has a nice farm. He also has a hog operation, and he also does like CSA garden. He owns a couple restaurants, and he was like, hey, you should, you know, like he knew I had an Instagram. He's like, you should check it out. You know, it's a little different world. You should do a little more. Like it's amazing, and it's also brings a new perspective to farming when you see different sizes of farms. You see a different angle of them on Instagram. It's not a place where I'm gonna be like advertising, hey, this piece of equipment's for sale, or does anybody have this problem with their piece of equipment. It's different. It's more like having fun, showing an amazing side of the farm. And for me, I wanted to also, I was like, you know what? Okay. I tried to figure out my niche in it, and I'm still developing it and figuring out what works, what doesn't work. For me, I mean, I know some farmers are a little hesitant to show where they farm a little bit, you know, exactly on a map, because people can show up at your farm. I get it. You know, some people you won't show their kids and stuff. And, you know, me and my wife talked about that, and we're pretty open with that, and my kid loves it, so he really wants to like do videos and have fun. So I've tried to include them in it, and include my family in it, and say, you know what, like, this is a family farm. They are involved with the farm. They come to see me on the farm. They come for rides on the farm. You know, sometimes I have to stop farming because my family comes first, and I need to take my kid to daycare or to preschool or to swimming lessons. You know, there's always something up, right? So it's a family operation, and it's good to see that side of it. But Instagram is like its own little thing, and I shouldn't say little, it's huge, but it's a lot of fun. And when you start to connect with other farmers, you know, like making funny videos together, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Good for you for humanizing the whole industry. And I can only imagine, I was thinking, what are those kids going to be using as a platform? I mean, how old is TikTok? Like a year, 2 years?
Well, TikTok's going to be old by then already. So yeah, I do have a TikTok account, but I just have a private one. I've used it to make an odd video and then share it on Instagram. I've never really posted anything on TikTok, to be honest. It is funny to scroll through though, and I mean, there's always the running joke. It's like Instagram is TikTok from 2 weeks ago. It's like the trend just flows down to Instagram, and we're about 2 weeks behind. But I just say, well, I'm a little old for TikTok, so that's why I'm 2 weeks behind. I'm right on time where I should be.
Well, you're ahead of the curve on social media, and that's part of why we got the opportunity to have this conversation and share what's going on with you in farming on the show. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been really great to hear about the farm, and, you know, it's really interesting perspective on your culture and your music, teaching history. Just to wrap things up, I wanted to get your professional opinion on one more thing. Where are you at on this Battle of Alberta right now? Where do you stand? What's going on in there? You're a big hockey guy.
I'm jealous. I stayed up to watch it last night. I mean, I don't really have any friends that are closely tied to the Calgary or Edmonton, but I mean, I'm a hockey guy. I grew up playing hockey and I love it. I still play beer league hockey every winter. But you know, I'm curious to see, and I do have a bet going on it. I pick Calgary over Edmonton. I pick a balanced team over a superstar team in the playoffs. But when your superstar is McDavid, you know, I mean, if they actually start calling penalties like they did against him yesterday, Calgary's going to be in trouble. You know, last year when the Jets beat Edmonton, yeah, go Jets. You know, I mean, everyone was mad because I believe the Jets probably should have had about 40 penalties taking McDavid down, but somehow we never got called. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah.
Nice, man. Okay, well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's very interesting to hear your perspective, and now I'll know you even better as I'm sure the algorithms have picked up on the fact that we're talking, so you'll probably come up first even more in my feed, right? They just somehow know. Yeah. They say it's that predictive, but I know they're listening. Let's be real.
They know. They're always listening.
Yeah, which is good and bad. I mean, that's the curse of the world we live in. I mean, there's such amazing tools. There's obviously a lot of dangers and downsides to it, you know. Like for you becoming too famous and just selling T-shirts full time, and then we can't get you to work on the farm.
Selling T-shirts to somebody besides my mom. Yeah, that would be a dream right there. Well,
if you started making big money selling merch, you'd be like, you know, merch margin, farming margins, merch margin. You won't be showing up for work at some
Yeah.
point, but no, it's good. Keep up the good work. It's nice to see a lighthearted side of farming and a grown man dancing and, give a shit level super low.
Oh, I'm glad
and,
you enjoy it, man.
Like
It's a lot of fun.
It takes balls to do it, so good on you for that. And yeah, good luck this season. I hope you can seed.
Me too. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Me too.
It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
come.
We're working on it. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Good, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and all the best. Thanks, brother.